said, I want to see her brains flow. And she, with all her might, hit Colleen in the head.
I knew exactly what I was doing. Everything that I did that night, I knew what I was doing.
What's your definition of evil? A tall, slender man chasing you through a dark forest? An angry teenager gunning down his schoolmates? What if I told you there was an 18-year-old girl who and killed her friend for simply being jealous of her? Let's dive into the case of the girl whose jealousy led her to torturing her friend. This story begins in West Virginia, where Krista Pike was born on March 10, 1976. For the first part of her childhood, she grew up with her grandparents. Sometimes she was easy to be around. Other times, she would be aggressive and unhappy. But there were reasons behind this. Krista's playground was her granddad's slaughterhouse, and her grandma was a devout Christian. However, she had a friend, Ernest, who continuously abused Krista throughout her childhood. But Krista was really close with her grandmother. When she died, Krista attempted to take her own life. She was 12. Throughout her teens, she would often as a way to cope with the stress. Soon enough, she was sent to live with her mom, Carissa. At the time, she was an alcoholic, and their relationship was very bumpy.
She could be so sweet and loving one day and then in trouble the next, and it was just an ongoing battle with her.
But Carissa was at fault too. She would date many men, and some of them would be very violent to Krista. This is what she said about one of her mother's exes. He made this leather strap with a wooden handle on it specifically to beat the hell out of me with. It wasn't going well for Krista or her mom. In 1994, when Krista was 18, her mom sent her to a Job Corps, a vocational training program for troubled teens at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville.
Job Corps promised an education. She could be a nursing assistant.
Job Corps was Krista's dream come true, but not because of the career opportunities. She'd met another student, Daryl Shipp. He was 17 years old and declared himself a Satanist. Within weeks, Krista was a passionate Satanist too.
I think she sort of latched onto it because it was interesting to him.
Daryl was respected, if not feared. He protected me. He was probably the first man that I'd ever had in my life that wanted to protect me, that saw me as, you know, a treasure, something good, instead of something to use and toss to the side.
Soon, Krista's closest friends were Daryl and Shadella Peterson, who was described as a quiet girl. She seemed to have found her gang, but something put Krista off. She had become convinced that another girl, Colleen Slemmer, had an interest in Daryl and wanted to steal him from her. This was completely false. Colleen didn't want anything to do with Daryl or Krista. She was very scared of her, as Krista had begun to bully her severely. She would come into her dorm room at night and make horrifying threats to her. Colleen would call her mom and say how she really wanted to go back home.
I need to get out of here. I need to get home. I don't want to be here. I hate it. And I said, you can't. You signed a contract. You have to stay there.
Colleen's mom, May, would regret these words for the rest of her life. On January 12, 1995, Krista suggested to Colleen they go to a nearby park and smoke together, as a way of saying sorry for her behavior over the last few months. But Krista had a much darker reason for inviting Colleen out.
I wanted to get her off campus, and I had every intention of fighting her.
They met in the evening, Colleen, Krista, Daryl, and Shadala.
She didn't have a clue the danger she was in.
Indeed, Colleen was genuinely hoping they would put all of their conflicts, or Krista's conflicts, in the past. But the horror was just beginning. When the four of them started walking through a tunnel under the park, Krista started getting a feeling that something was off. She asked the group if they really had. That's when things got nasty. Krista started hitting Colleen in the face over and over again until she fell to the ground.
Krista was hitting Colleen. She was fighting back. And Colleen wanted to try to make sense of the whole thing, and she kept saying, now wait a minute, let's talk about this.
But the more Colleen would try to save herself, the angrier Krista would get. It was like she couldn't stand the thought of Colleen winning. She wanted her dead. Krista took out a box cutter from her jacket and slashed Colleen's stomach, hands, and Colleen was still fighting.
Well, Colleen tried to run away, and that really infuriated Krista. And Krista and Daryl knocked her down and drug her back. Then she started kicking her.
Then Krista took out a small meat cleaver. The night was far from over. Looking back, Krista now sees that she was punishing Colleen for her own misfortunes.
I knew exactly what I was doing. Everything that I did that night, I knew what I was doing. And I think I was taking things out on her that had happened to me years ago.
After cutting Krista with the meat cleaver, she passed her box cutter on to Daryl. He cut a pentagram into her chest.
Here is a young woman who must have gone through absolute hell. And I can't imagine anybody going through that, and I can't imagine enduring that as she did for that long.
Krista and her gang toyed with Colleen like a cat with a mouse. They let her get up and beg for her life before viciously toying with her some more.
At one point, they said that she told them, just let me go, I'll not say anything. And they said, you know, we can't do that. You know, we've already done stuff to you.
The attack seemed to last for a lifetime. Krista and Daryl were simply not done with Colleen.
For 45 minutes, she had cut her. She cut her throat. She made that comment, the die. And so she took a large piece of asphalt that was discarded on the side of the road. She made 5 strikes with that piece of asphalt, and finally she said, I want to see her brains flow. And she, with all her might, hit Colleen in the head and cracked her skull, and gray matter did spill from Colleen's head.
If this isn't dark enough already, Krista took a piece of Colleen's skull as a trophy. After hiding Colleen's body in the bushes, the 3 returned to the campus. Krista was proud of herself. The next day, she would show the skull piece to people on campus. So, when Colleen's body was found, the police were positive who they had to arrest. Soon enough, Krista, Daryl, and Shadala were all in custody. The police were shocked at how jolly Krista was, and how willing she was to give them all of the details of the gruesome murder she had just committed.
During the interview, she's very giddy, laughed, very cooperative. She wanted to tell us all about it, but she was giddy. It was a happy thing for her. It was the greatest thing ever, and I've never seen anybody else like that, like her, actually.
News of this event shocked the whole town, and soon enough, the whole country. How could an 18-year-old do this to another 18-year-old?
It's really a slaughter, and that's not a word that I'd use lightly, but it was a slaughter. This victim is pleading for her life. She's trying to run away. She's saying, if you let me go, I won't do anything to put you in trouble.
Nothing convinced Krista and Daryl to stop. In fact, the more Colleen pleaded for her life, the more violent the two would get. It's the stuff of nightmares that no one had thought was even possible from a bunch of teens.
It did not ever once enter my thoughts that Krista was involved in that murder. Once I found out that's what had happened, I still couldn't believe it. I didn't believe it for years.
Of course, how could your own daughter torture someone like this? Krista was the first to get arrested, and she had a reason behind telling the police everything from the get-go.
I was the first one they arrested, the first one they interviewed. And I thought that if I went in there and told him that I did every single thing that happened up there, that Daryl and Shadala would just get to walk out of there and they wouldn't worry about them anymore because they had the real killer.
When a psychiatrist spoke to Krista, their conclusion was that Krista's profile matched the one of a regular serial killer. Luckily, she was caught the first time. Perhaps, unsurprisingly, the police arrested Shadala and Daryl as well. Shadala, who had only been the group's guard dog, testified against Krista and Daryl. She got off with probation. Krista and Tadaro were charged with murder. Tadaro was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. As for Krista, Colleen's mother, May, expressed her grief after her trial.
I would like to see her killed and not go on living with taxpayers' money paying for her to live in jail to get an education.
Indeed, in March 1996, she was sentenced to death. She was the youngest woman to be sent to death row in the U.S. at the time. During her trial, Krista kept smiling, giggling, and sending notes to her mom. She was just as giddy as she was when the police caught her over a year before.
Crystal kept looking back, laughing and joking, sending notes to her mom, sending notes to her lawyer, just laughing away.
However, Krista began to cry when she heard her own confession she gave about the 45-minute long. When she realized the brutal reality of her daughter's deeds, Carissa tried to defend her in front of the jurors, saying that she had been a bad mom and it was partially her fault.
Her mom took the stand and said, and it sticks in my mind today, I was a terrible mother. I was a terrible mother. She tried to show the jury, hey, some of this is my fault.
If there's any one thing that I could change if I went back, would be that I would have spent more time with my children.
But no matter Carissa's words, Krista had done what she had done. She was the first woman sentenced to death since 1837. But neither the judge or the prosecution could shake off the gruesome details of this murder.
I've never been in the presence of anyone I thought was pure evil, but to me, she's pure evil.
If Carissa still argues that Krista was a sweet girl beneath everything, this is what Krista wrote to Tadaro after her trial. You see what I get for trying to be nice to that? I went ahead and bashed her brains out so she'd die quickly instead of letting her bleed to death and suffer more. And they fry me. Krista showed no remorse for her murder and signed the letter, Lil Devil. To this day, Krista awaits her execution by electric chair. As of 2022, she's 46 years old. While May still pushes for an execution date, Krista insists that she doesn't think she should be punished in this way.
I think I deserve to be in here for the rest of my life. I do, I know I do. I know I don't deserve to be out walking around with everybody else in normal society. I did something horrible that is unacceptable, and I realize that. But I don't deserve to die for the actions of 3 individuals.
In 2002, after trying to another prisoner for attacking her friend, Krista asked the judge to speed up her execution. She wanted to get out of that cell, even if it meant dying. Then, 3 weeks after her scheduled execution, she changed her mind and made an appeal. She is still on death row, but with no set date. Krista spends 23 hours a day in a cell by herself. For 1 hour every day, she gets out into another space where she can walk about and interact with a few inmates. She will never get a peace of mind. What she did will torture her forever. Meanwhile, Colleen's family will never get closure either. Losing someone in such a horrific way haunts you forever. And that is the truly upsetting case of Colleen Slemmer. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Anna Solves. Hey, don't be shy, give this video a like and subscribe, and if you can take it, why not check out our other disturbing cases? Have a good night, stay safe, and take care of each other. It's scary out there.